Welcome to video 40. Before we proceed, one minor thing I wanted to point out, just so you aren't confused. So remember how we took a look at bootstrap.php and it included this common.php file. Well, if you take a look at common.php, and this is within the sample files that PayPal provided, you'll notice that it has this getBaseURL function, which determines the root URL of the sample code. And then it also includes a create authorization function here that deals with creating a credit card based payment. So both of these things we aren't going to need. We aren't going to be dealing with credit cards in this tutorial, and we don't need a base URL function because we actually have a constant that defines that URL for us. So you don't have to worry about this particular file and don't need to worry about copying over any code. However, for step 2, we do need to copy over a lot of code from this create payments using PayPal file. Pretty much everything in this file is important and we need to copy over and adjust it as necessary. So let's go ahead and find that file. Here within our sample code, it's going to be within the payments folder, and we want to look at create payments using PayPal. So I'm going to open that up with my text editor and let me copy everything. Close this file and let's paste it into our payments model. So just down here at the bottom, kind of like what we did for the last video, I'll paste it in place. So the first step here, let's take out our testing code so we can remove this pre and the print r. And we're going to need another public function. Let's call this public function create payment, like so. Let's assume that we're going to be passing into this function, and I guess I should be accurate. Really, we're dealing with a method because this is an object. We're going to be passing into this method two things: an items array and also a details array. And the items array is going to include an array of all the different items that are in the shopping cart. And the details array are going to include things like what's the subtotal cost, what's the shipping cost, what's the tax, all those minor details that we also need to provide to PayPal. So there we go. We have a basic create payment method. Let's adjust the text here. So we're going to say so it creates PayPal payment, and that's step 2, kind of in the PayPal process. So it's public, and we're going to return potentially later an error string in case something goes wrong and we need to report an error back to the user. Now to go and take a look at our code that we need to be working with, we need to include these use lines. So I'm going to copy that, paste it up here. We have our session starting in our init.php, so we don't need that. And then let's copy the rest of this code into our new method that we just created. So copy, and I'm going to delete. I can actually delete the rest of this because we've copied everything we'll need, and paste it into our create payment method. So let's go back up to the top and work through this step by step. Let me fix the indenting first off. All the way down to the bottom of the file. So, okay, fix that. So the first thing we do is we create a payer object and we set the payment method to PayPal, so that's all good. And then we need to create the individual items. So let's do set items here. And I'm going to be looping through each of the items in our item array and creating a new items array that contains individual item object. Because you'll notice each item that we're sending to PayPal is this item object. So for that in mind, I'm going to do I equals 0 and create a temporary variable. And I'm going to loop through each of the items in our items array. So for each items array as item, and then after each loop we're going to add 1, so I plus plus, like that. And then each time we loop we need to create a new item. So I'm going to copy this, paste it in here, and rather than doing item 1, we're going to say items, so that's our items array at the spot I, like so. And then in case you're a little bit confused, this is just standard object-oriented approach. So we're calling the setName method, next we would call the setCurrency method, etc. It's just appears like this because I think that's a little bit easier to see visually. So we're creating a new item, we want to set the name, and we're going to set the name based on this items array that was passed in. So the name is going to be item name. Set the currency, this is going to be our constant within our init file, so that's going to be PayPal currency. I'm going to set the quantity, and remember how in the previous video we had updated our products get function or get method here to return the quantity. Well, this is where we're going to use it. So we're going to get item quantity, and then finally get the price. There we go. So what we're doing, we have an items array which contains things like the name, quantity, and prices. We're going to loop through each of the items in the item array. We're going to create a new item and set common things like name, currency, quantity, and price. So with that done, we're going to create an items list object that PayPal expects. And then we're going to set items, and we're going to pass in the items array that we just created here. So that's the process of setting items. Next up, we need to set the details. So we're going to do details equals new details, and then similarly we're going to set all the common things. We're going to be using our details array, so we'll start with shipping. So that's going to be details array shipping. And I'm just going to copy this section here, just easier to paste it in. So we're going to copy the tax here, and then finally the subtotal. And that'll set the basic details that we need, that PayPal expects from us. Then the next item is to set the amount. So we're going to create a new amount object. We're going to set the currency, which is going to be our constant again. We're going to set the total, which is included in the details array. And then finally, set details on the details variable that we set up here. So that's all good. And then now moving down one step at a time here. So next is we're going to create the transaction. So transaction is new transaction. We're going to set the amount, and that's correct. The amount variable that we created up here, so that's good. We're going to set the item list. That's the item list variable. And in case that's also correct, created that up here. And we're going to set the description. It's sort of up to you. I didn't really see this description referenced anywhere visually that the customer could potentially see. So it's sort of up to you. I think I'm going to leave it blank in my particular case, like so. So we've created the transaction, so that's good. Next, we need to create the URLs. And these are the URLs that PayPal expects back from us. So we're going to be setting the return URL, where we want to be redirected to after payment has successfully been processed, and then the cancel URL, where we want to go if the user cancels the transaction. And we don't need this get base URL function anymore because we actually have our own constant for that. So I can delete that line. So set return URL is going to be our constant, which is, so that's our constant, so it's going to be site path. And then we're going to redirect to our success.php page. Like so. And the cancel URL is pretty straightforward. We want to do site path again, but we're going to redirect back to the shopping cart. Like so. Okay, so almost done here. So we created our URLs. I'm going to go ahead, create payment. So payment is new payment. We're committing a sale. We're setting payer, redirect URLs. Everything here looks good. And then we're going to try to submit that information to PayPal and create the payment. And then the API context here needs to be our API context variable. So if I can find it here, it's going to be this API context, like so. And then the only difference here is that we named it slightly differently, like so. So if that works, awesome. If not, we're going to catch the error, and we want to send that error back to the user. We're going to send it back to the cart page. So we're going to do return xGetMessage. And we'll have the controller handle what we want to do with that error message. Okay, so we've created the payment. We're trying to create it. If it doesn't work, we send an error message. If it does work, we need to get the redirect URL. And this we can leave alone, I believe. And then finally, we're going to redirect if necessary. So we're going to create a session variable, which we're going to use later. And we're going to call that one payment ID. So payment underscore ID. So that looks good. If that's set, redirect, exit, everything else looks good. So let's go ahead and save it, and I'll join you in the next video to do a little bit of testing.